Hello everyone, it's the Mountie, and today I begin a new marathon. For the next few countdowns, they will be centered on the 2008 anime Clannad, as well as its sequel, Clannad After Story. What originally started as a graphic novel grew into one of the most popular anime in recent memory. With great characters, an interesting form of storytelling, fantastic music, and the way it handles emotions and drama overall makes it one of the best. So, to kick off this marathon, I'm going to do a top 10 list about my favorite episodes from Clannad. As you can expect, there are massive spoilers ahead. Now, with 22 episodes plus 2 bonus episodes under its belt, picking just 10 episodes was hard for me. So if you don't see an episode that you like on this list, it's either because I didn't like it, or it was because I did like it, but not enough to put it into the top 10. But since this list is just my opinion, feel free to leave a comment about your favorite episodes of Clannad, or make your own list. With that said, let's rock it! To start off this countdown is the episode that started it all. Episode 1 starts off on a good foot by explaining the main character, Tomoya's backstory right away so that the audience can understand why he acts like this in the first few episodes. After that, the narrative also explains the backstory of other characters like Nagisa, as well as set up the events of the season pretty well. The characters in this episode are also really good. While it's nice that we get backstories for characters like Nagisa and Tomoya, characters that don't get backstories in this episode like Sanae, Akio, and Tomoya are still pretty interesting characters either because of their personality, comedic bits, or because of how badass they are, which also makes the episode very entertaining to watch. Another positive I can give this episode that I can also give to other episodes on this list is the fantastic soundtrack that plays during certain emotional moments of the episode, such as Nagisa and Tomoya first meeting, the scene where Tomoya beats up the biker gang, etc. These moments are great enough on their own, but the music that plays during these scenes really make these moments stand out a lot more. My only issue with this episode is characters like Sunehara. Honestly, I feel like they drag down the episode, even if it's just for a little bit. But aside from that, it's still a good episode to kick off the season. Number 9 is Episode 7. After the events of Episode 6, Fuko's coma gets worse and she starts to become forgotten by some of the students. All the while, Tomoya and Nagisa convince Fuko's sister to get married. Although I'm not the biggest fan of Fuko's character arc, I gotta admit that the conflict was handled really well in this episode, and the dialogue and emotions focused on said conflict, such as the scene where Tomoya and Nagisa talk to Kuoko, aka Fuko's sister, as well as the scene where Kuoko doesn't see Fuko in the beginning of this episode, were also handled really well. Speaking of Fuko, I really love the comedic bits with Tomoya and Fuko in this episode. The best example I can think of is the tongue twister challenge. Plus, any scene where the annoying as all hell Sunehara gets his ass kicked always puts a smile on my face. Number 8 is, funnily enough, Episode 8. Following the events of Episode 7, more and more people are unable to see Fuko, and even those close to her are beginning to forget about her. Tomoya and Nagisa try to cheer her up, but when Sanae and Akio pretty much forget about Fuko, Nagisa, and Tomoya head back to the school. Although this episode lacks in good comedic bits, it makes up for that with great drama and great emotional bits, which are made even better with the music that plays during said scenes. Since Fuko is being forgotten more and more, it makes me feel really sad for her, since all she wanted to do was get people to attend her sister's wedding, and now those people are beginning to forget about the wedding as well as Fuko, and there's nothing she can do about it. But although Fuko is being slowly forgotten, the scenes with Tomoya and Nagisa and Fuko together are still really good, and the dialogue they exchange either about the current situation, or when they get Fuko a gift, are pretty good as well. But although it gets bad for Fuko in this episode, the next episode gets better. Episode 9, aka the finale to the Fuko arc, starts off with Tomoya, Nagisa, and Fuko spending the night at the school having a party in preparation for Kuoko's wedding. The next day, however, Tomoya and Nagisa forget about Fuko and can't see her anymore. They do eventually see her again after being reminded about Kuoko's wedding, but after the ceremony goes well, Fuko fades away. Overall, I think Episode 9 did a very good job. The scenes with Tomoya, Nagisa, and Fuko are still really good, and I found the shipping moment with Tomoya and Nagisa to be pretty funny. The scenes where Tomoya and Nagisa forget about Fuko was pretty sad as well as dramatic. I thought that the wedding scene and Fuko's goodbye were really good, and I think the ending of the episode was overall pretty satisfying as well as sad. It's a shame though that for the rest of Season 1, Fuko was reduced to lame-ass comic relief. After the Fuko arc, the next character arc, which is one of my favorites by the way, focuses on the bookworm/prodigy, Gatomi. In episodes 10 and 11, Kotomi makes friends with the help of Tomoya, she begins to play the violin, and she slowly begins to open up to others. Following those sets of episodes, Kotomi continues to open up to people, including a moment where she hangs out with Tomoya and his group of friends. She begins to break out of her rut and attend her classes, since she spent most of her days in the library. And after Tomoya runs into a strange man who Kotomi thinks wants to steal her parents' thesis, it's revealed that not only Kotomi's parents died, but it's also revealed that Tomoya had met Kotomi when he was a kid. In terms of story, I think this episode did a good job with that, because not only did we see Kotomi open up more and more, but we also saw her hanging out with the main group of characters, which shows that she has come a long way since the beginning of the series, even if it is just for one scene. I also like the revelation that Tomoya met Kotomi when he was a kid, since it was set up in previous episodes that Kotomi remembered him, but he didn't remember her, and in this episode, we know why. I also think the characters' music and conflict were also handled really well, especially scenes like Kotomi hanging out with Tomoya and his friends, dramatic scenes like the bus crash as well as Kotomi's meltdown, and even shocking moments like how Kotomi's parents died. And how did they? Just wait a little bit and I'll tell you. For this next entry, we're going to jump ahead a bit. After Kotomi and Tomoya have their character arcs, the last set of episodes focus on Nagisa as well as the drama club getting ready for their play. In this episode, we find out Nagisa's past, which was previously mentioned in episode 19, and it's pretty emotional. We also find out that Akio and Sane gave up their dreams in order to protect their daughters since she nearly died one fateful night. One of the reasons I like this episode is because of Nagisa's backstory. Clannad is many things, but one of the things it does well is put the viewer on a feels-coaster. And this is no exception, with emotional music playing in the background, the way the scene is framed, the fact that a main character nearly died, and the parents feel guilt over that, etc. It's probably my favorite backstory of the first season because of stuff like this. Sure, Tomoya's, which I'll cover later, was pretty sad, but that was because it involved a relative of hers nearly dying, not Tomoya herself. I also really like the scenes where Tomoya interacts with Nagisa's parents, because they make for some good comedic bits, such as when Akio and Tomoya try to keep a secret from Tsunai, or the baseball game scene where Nagisa makes an indirect confession to Tomoya and embarrassment ensues. I kid you not, when I first saw the baseball scene and saw that indirect confession, it put me in a laughing fit for a couple of minutes because it was that silly. Then again, that's probably because I like the shipping moments with Tomoya and Nagisa since I find it kinda cute, but yeah. But I think another reason I like this episode is because of scenes like this.
It's not there, okay? So just get back to making out in the bedroom or whatever you kids do these days. Huh? What am I saying? I can't encourage that!
I freaking love this character. He's so over the top at points, I can't help but sit back and just laugh. Remember when I said I would mention how Kotomi's parents died later? Well, it's later. In this episode, we find out that as children, Tomoya visited Kotomi a lot, and this was pretty much her only friend. But around the time of Kotomi's birthday, her parents were killed in the plane crash, and she's been a depressed wreck ever since. I gotta be honest, I really like this backstory. Not only does it explain why Kotomi wanted to be by herself early on in the season, but as someone who has dealt with the death of a loved one at a young age, it kinda hits home for me when I see this. Helped even further with the great music that plays during both the flashback and when it's revealed that her parents died. Yeah, if you couldn't already tell, I really like this soundtrack. Another reason I like this episode is the scene where Tomoya helps clean up Kotomi's garden. Not only does it show a more caring side to Tomoya since he's willing to sacrifice his free time to help out an old friend, but it also shows how determined he is. Speaking of determination, I really like the scene where Nagisa, Kyu, and Ryo try to get Kotomi a new violin after the old one broke. It shows that they care about their new friend, and again shows how far Kotomi has come since the beginning of the series because she now has friends that care about her. Overall, I think this episode is great. It has a lot of good character moments, the backstory is great, the music is once again fantastic, and with this episode, all the pieces for the finale to this arc are put on the table. So where will that episode be? Well, much like last time, just wait and see. After Kotomi's arc ended, the next arc focused on the kick-ass character Tomoya running for student body president. After Tomoya gets suspended because of a fight that the school staff was too lazy to stop, Tomoya shows up to his place and helps cook his meals, wakes him up, and comes over to his house because she feels responsible for his suspension. I'm not exactly the biggest fan of this scene because it just feels a little silly to watch a badass like Tomoya act like what is essentially a maid to Tomoya. But as the episode goes on, it gets better, such as the scene when Kotomi, Ryu, and Kyu show up on Sunday, and the interactions between them and Tomoya is pretty funny, especially when it escalates. I also didn't mind the sports montage Tomoya was involved in to help get votes because it shows that she is that determined to be the student body president. Speaking of determination, I really like the moment near the end where Tomoya protects Nagisa from that male tennis player after said player hit her leg with a tennis ball. Because not only do I like the shipping moments with these two characters, I also like it because it shows how far Tomoya has come since the first episode because of Nagisa. It's really sweet. Another scene I really liked was Tomoya's backstory, where she admits that she was a terrible sibling back then to her brother. And as someone who has experienced their parents divorcing, as well as had suicidal thoughts at one dark point in my life, I can relate to this backstory really well as feel bad for what Tomoya went through. I also really liked the friendship between Tomoya and Tomoya, and I thought that these two could be a couple at some point if the focus wasn't on Tomoya and Nagisa being the main ship. And then I saw this, and I wanted to drown in sulfuric acid after I finished watching it. Overall, a great episode, and with Tomoya becoming student body president, a great conclusion. Speaking of conclusions, number 2 is episode 14. After the events of episode 13, Kotomi returns to the school and we find out the truth about this guy. He is Kotomi's legal guardian, and it's also revealed that he didn't want Kotomi's parents' thesis at all since there weren't any written notes for it. So why was he following her all this time? Because he wanted to give her something. A suitcase belonging to her parents, and in said suitcase contains a note, as well as a teddy bear, which was a gift Kotomi requested to her parents before the tragic accident. And here's one of my issues with the dub. In the original Japanese version, Tomoya notes that he can't read what Kotomi's parents wrote on the letter. Since it was done with the Japanese voice, I get that he couldn't read English. But in the English dub...
So do you know what it says?
You think I can read English?
Are you fucking serious?
Maybe it's just a nitpick, but it kinda irks me a little when he says that he can't read English, but he's speaking English. Moving on. One of the reasons I love this episode over the others is this particular scene. After all the build-up / backstory for Kotomi, getting closure for her parents, the revelation of the mystery man, the truth about the paper, and seeing her tear up after reading her parents' letter was not only heartwarming to see get wrapped up, helped with the great emotional music playing in the background, but was also very satisfying since now Kotomi can move forward with her life after all that she's gone through. Which she does. And unlike the Fuko arc, this arc actually does mean something for the rest of the series, since Kotomi becomes part of the main cast after all this, and instead of being cooped up in the library by herself, she appears more often with Tomoya and his friends. But if I like this episode so much, what topped it? Well, let's find out. Number 1 is the episode that wraps up a story arc. Number 1 is an episode that got a lot right, including an element I don't like seeing in anime. Number 1 is episode 22. After all this shit Tomoya and Nagisa went through to get the drama club back together, this episode shows the fruits of their labor as the big day where Nagisa performs her play has arrived. Except... in the previous episode, Nagisa found out the truth about her parents giving up their dreams for her, and now she's an emotional wreck. Despite Tomoya and his friends trying to help Nagisa get out of this wreck, she chokes up on stage and is about to ruin the play when Akio-sana and Tomoya give her a pep talk to not only get her out of this funk, but to also stop blaming herself for her parents giving up their dreams, also wrapping up this particular character arc that started in episode 19. And this is one of the reasons I love this episode over the other ones on this list. Unlike the other conclusions to character arcs like Kotomi and Tomoya, this episode wraps up Nagisa's character arc, the plot point of the drama club getting back together as well as the play, and even the shipping moments with Tomoya and Nagisa, since at the end of the episode, Tomoya confesses his love for Nagisa and they become a thing. It's very satisfying to watch all the plot points get wrapped up, and the way they are wrapped up are also very well done. Same goes for music and animation. Speaking of the confession, I also think this scene was also handled really well. I'm not exactly the biggest fan of romance in anime, but the way they handled romance with this show made me appreciate this anime a lot more, and after all the shipping moments with these two, it was so satisfying, at least for me, to see these two become a thing, and it made me interested to see what would happen next for these two. Thankfully for me, I didn't have to wait too long, since Clannad got a sequel not too long afterwards. But that's for later. I'm the Mountie, and this concludes my top 10 favorite Clannad episodes list. Take care.